It's Sunday morning, and welcome to the latest edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks. We've still got a lot to talk about. We're basically in the middle of a 3 day stretch of severe weather. Yesterday, there were tornadoes in southern Oklahoma and parts of Texas. I'll show you where those occurred. Also, a pretty big day potentially today. A little more iffy on the placement of things, but you'll want to watch Kansas, parts of Oklahoma, even down into Texas again today. And the big day continues to be on Monday with Illinois under the gun, even parts of Iowa, eastern Missouri, all the way down into northeast Arkansas. I'm meteorologist Ted Keller. A lot of details to go over, so let's get started. Tornado reports from yesterday, largely where the SPC outlined the highest risk for both intense tornadoes and just tornadoes in general, worked out pretty well. There were two clusters. This activity here is just east of I-35, so east of Pauls Valley, east of Sulphur, that area. Had tornado reports from, it looks like, two separate supercells. I did not have a chance to go back and look at the data on that. Then we had one here that kind of traced south of Wichita Falls toward the southeast as well. So I don't have any information on those tornadoes. I just haven't had time to research it. Hopefully no one was injured or no major damage occurred with those. Now, the severe weather risk for today is largely the same. They've been tweaking this quite a bit, and it's not surprising because, as I'll show you here in a minute, there are a couple of things that make it kind of hard to pinpoint exactly where this activity will occur. But broadly, we have an enhanced risk that covers central and eastern Kansas, and also down now, this is new, into northern Oklahoma. That's the level 3 enhanced. Level 2 goes all the way down to Dallas, with level 1 kind of branching off in different directions. If we zoom in on the enhanced area here, level 3, you can see that I-70 corridor, so Topeka, Kansas City, Wichita, all solidly in this, and northern Oklahoma, and it does include areas that were hit just a few days ago. Enid would be right here, so that is, cause for some frazzled nerves there. Other thunderstorms could be developing roughly in that same area. No guarantee of that, but they are under a risk they were not previously under. So if we look at the tornado risk, likewise, this was extended down into this area as well. This is a 5% risk right here, where you see the brown, 5% chance of a tornado within 25 miles. Again, the major metropolitan cities you can see here, but increasingly northern Oklahoma, maybe Tulsa later on in the evening, and all the way back closer to the Panhandle, actually, around that area. Now, remember I was talking about the intensity overlays now that the SPC has begun to highlight more, because there are three of them. There's an intensity 1, which I'm showing you right here. This is an attempt to show what the peak tornado intensity might be. What's interesting about this always is that these do not always match. It used to be you had to have a high probability before they started talking about intensity. So now what they're realizing is, yeah, there might be a lower probability of a tornado here, 2%, but you're still looking at the same probability of an intensity of a tornado. So, in other words, it just attempts, if there is an isolated storm that happens to go in this 2% area, this is the intensity we're talking about. So that extends out of the highest probability area. So that's an important distinction. So basically, they're saying that the dry line is looking less probable down here, but just as intense. If we switch to the hail risk, that is at its maximum 30% chance right in the heart of that enhanced risk area, including those areas of northern Oklahoma. The wind risk shifts. Now, this entire thing is expected to evolve overnight, and with the jet stream pattern that is evolving, I don't expect this to weaken overnight. In fact, it might even get more intense in some areas. But the wind risk definitely becomes more probable later on as any isolated storms develop into lines of storms and develop some squall lines, which could pose a risk. And always, I want to remind you that these outlooks are 24-hour outlooks. So in other words, if I show you this, it doesn't mean it's going to happen within the hour. This is going to happen, closer to 6 o'clock and beyond. And a lot of this will be overnight tonight. This forecast would technically end at 7 a.m. Central on Monday morning. CSU's outlook has the tornado maximum right here for folks in the Ozarks. We are in the 10% category. I'll talk about that and what impacts that will have on us shortly in a different venue, different video. But the hail risk is maximized in northern Oklahoma, central Kansas, and even the wind risk. This is different from what the SPC is showing. They're putting it more up here, whereas the wind risk is more focused just to the north and east of Tulsa and in southeast Kansas. So again, there's a lot of uncertainty here. And this, why I show you this is because it's a pattern matching kind of product, a machine learning product. So it takes a look at similar scenarios that have happened in the past and then looks at what tornado reports we had, for example, and highlights them here. So it's saying that when something like this happened in the past, we had tornadoes occurring in this yellow area. That's the interpretation of that. Now, NATOcast doesn't really get too excited about northern Oklahoma at all, but does look back at the past. It does the same kind of thing and maximizes that area, from eastern Kansas to around the Kansas City, St. Joe area, even encompassing Lincoln, maybe Omaha, and that's the brown, that's 5%. So the probability is about the same, but lower than CSU's. So let's look at the HRRR here, HRRR, 500 millibars at 6 o'clock. So we are looking at upper level winds impinging on the area. So you want these, and I'll show you the bulk shear in a minute, to basically organize supercells. What's interesting on here is this little short wave that's showing up. That's interesting. There's another one right here. All these are players in the game tonight because whatever develops with this one later on this afternoon or maybe even late this morning will impact what happens to the low-level conditions out here, which in turn will impact anything that develops here moving into that. This itself could be a triggering mechanism if there's a outflow boundary or something. So it's a kind of a complex situation. I'm chasing today. I'm taking a bet that this right here will fire something here, hopefully before dark. So this time of year, the 6 to 8 o'clock time frame is chaseable, depending on the backlighting and things like that. But the bulk shear is favorable all across the area. These arrows are aligned in a way that go along whatever boundary we can determine is here. So that's a favorable positioning. Here's what's interesting, though. We take a look at Cape, and the instability, that's what Cape is not returning to Kansas right away. This is 6 o'clock. Now, this catches your eye right away. There seems to be some circulation here. These don't always work out, but that's why I think that they put this part of Oklahoma now in the enhanced risk area because of this model showing this. And there has been a lot of convective inhibition, so a cap in the atmosphere, but there does seem to be an eroding away of that cap right here as these upper level winds increase and we get some circulations across the dry line. So this is interesting, and there are capped areas for sure. But there are some open gaps here where storms could form. Now, this is interesting. I'm looking at these radar simulations out of the HRRR. This is 6 o'clock, nada, nothing. This is 8 o'clock, not much. This is back still in very, very dry air, so these would be elevated storms. This is the activity that's leaving. And if we go to 10 o'clock, we got some indications of maybe some cells trying to form, but nothing substantial. Now, this is just one run. I did see much more substantial supercell activity if I took the average in my own mind of other runs I've been looking at. So again, just because I'm recording this at a particular time, I'm using this one, doesn't necessarily mean it negates anything I'm saying. And just from a chasing perspective, I'll likely start here and then migrate northward. If I see that we can get isolated supercells at night in flat areas, yeah, you might be able to see something. And then I would just go down I-70 to here. Well, let's see. So I guess it would be more like this. And then this is the area we'll target for tomorrow. Let's take a look at that. Monday, still an enhanced risk. They may upgrade this almost certainly, I would think, because the upper level winds are very favorable here. And this corridor from southern Wisconsin to the Boot Heel is the highest probability of any severe weather. That's the level 3. If we break it down, tornado risk, there's a little bit more of a favored area, 10% chance of a tornado within 25 miles. That extends from Dubuque through eastern Iowa, a small sliver of northeast Kansas, and a huge chunk of central Illinois, including Peoria, Springfield, up to Davenport, the Quad Cities area. That's all under a higher risk. Now, speaking of higher risk, this is an example, and we had one for yesterday's forecast, of the second level of intensity. So the first level of intensity, you're basically clustering a lot around the EF0 and EF1s with a 14% chance of an EF2. So that encompasses all this area right here. Then this nested area right here is the next level. This is intensity 2. And the probabilities go down on an EF0, for example, and on EF1, and go up about 4% on EF2, and also go up a little bit on the EF5 and on the EF4 plus area. So again, they're just suggesting that, and this is coinciding in this case, that the more significant risk for a tornado is exactly matching the intensity level in this case. Again, there's room to tweak this kind of stuff. But the other thing about this is that the jet stream, I'll show you that in a minute, is moving a lot faster. So these storms will be moving faster. That affects lead time for people who are taking cover. It also affects storm chasers because it's just harder to do. You have to be more precise, and at some point you stop chasing them, and then you just kind of anchor and wait for them to come to you and hope you're right. Anyway, the tornado risk is at 15%, which is high, from central Illinois down to the Boot Heel, including parts of Tennessee and Kentucky today, and northeast Arkansas. I still think I'd put my money here, but these areas would be valid too. Hail, big chime hail, and then this becomes a big wind machine later on Monday night as that thing evolves. Let me show you that jet stream, and it's very, very strong with a predominant neutral to negatively tilted shortwave moving into the area. There probably will be initiation earlier on Monday, although I'm seeing some model data that suggests that may not be the case. There might be some leftover stuff here that will disintegrate basically and may leave down some important boundaries. So Monday, even though it looks pretty straightforward, will be a challenge to get right if you're up in this area and chasing. You have one more day to talk about Tuesday. This whole thing stretches out as it so often does. Becomes elongated along the front, so from Kentucky to Texas, we have a level 2 still working. There is a tornado threat with that on Tuesday. It's a 5% risk for much of Arkansas, a small sliver of Oklahoma, a little bit of Mississippi, with hail and wind coming in a little bit less on that for probabilities. And then the jet stream finally kind of leans over a little bit. That upper level cutoff system kind of moves to Hudson Bay. There's still an active stream here. Note that there's still activity out here, even though it does settle down quite a bit. I would look for more activity, maybe not the rest of the work week in the central zone here, but after that. And I will show you what it looks like on Wednesday. Again, the sagging south of that area. And then nothing is really showing up on CSU at all for right through day 8. Here's a supercell composite for the next 7 days. Spot on. Of course, the heavy emphasis on that is for the next 2 days, not so much afterwards. And then look at this. This is increased again. So the May 3rd through 9th period, not overwhelmingly high percentages, but showing up in the heartland of tornadoes for early May, certainly. So that's something that needs to be watched. Just, again, suggestive of the fact that more troughing is going to be developing out west. And this idea continues May 10th through the 16th. Just shifts just a little bit. Thanks for watching today's edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks. This is published every day after the morning Storm Prediction Center update. Also, remember to check that site off on day 1 because they update it fairly frequently. If you like this video, please like it. Also, you can subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.